People sometimes ask me, how did I get from being a typical material girl growing up in West Los Angeles to becoming an international women's rights activist fighting forced abortion in China? I think that anyone who commits their life to helping end the suffering of others has their own story to tell. You see, your pain holds the key to your purpose. In my case, it all started out on the playground as a young girl when I pondered the innocent question, who's better, girls or boys? At my elementary school, girls and boys separated themselves at recess. The boys went out to play kickball. The girls, however, played hopscotch and foursquare, two games I found hopelessly inane. This seemed to me unfair. So one day, I marched onto the kickball field and presented myself. To my surprise and delight, the boys allowed me to play. I held my own, and then I went to the PE teacher and persuaded him to make kickball a co-ed sport. I became the captain of the first all-girls kickball team. This did not make me popular with the boys. However, it did resolve the question in my mind of who's better, boys or girls. With my infallible 10-year-old logic, I decided conclusively, girls are better. Because we can do anything that boys can do, plus we can have babies. I proceeded to live out this idea as I grew up, and then my crowning achievement was during my third year at Yale Law School, I got pregnant and still managed to graduate a top student. And I thought to myself, see, I can do anything these guys can do, and I can make a baby at the same time. So, in triumph, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy soon after graduation. I went on to become an attorney, and everything went as planned until my husband and I decided that we wanted to have a second child. I got pregnant, we were delighted, we're looking forward to the new addition, and then suddenly I began to bleed uncontrollably, and I had a miscarriage. I spent 2 days lying on our living room couch, bleeding our baby away and weeping, and I called my mother and I said to her, Mom, why would I get pregnant with a baby that we so desperately want and have that baby taken away? I'll never forget her words. She said, no one understands why these things happen, but in a way that we can't possibly imagine now, I believe that God will use it for a purpose. I walled off that pain and lived as though it had never happened for years. Then one day at my law firm, an email flashed across my computer screen. A Chinese woman was seeking political asylum in the United States. She had been forcibly sterilized. This woman, who was tiny, had been literally dragged out of her home by family planning police, strapped down to a table, and a so-called doctor had sliced through her abdominal wall, tied her fallopian tubes, all of this without anesthesia. Now, I had known that China had a one-child policy, but I had no idea that it is currently enforced through forced abortion and forced sterilization. Then, in 2003, personal disaster struck. I had to have bilateral mastectomies, but the worst part of it was that I had contracted a deadly MRSA staph infection during the surgery. Overnight, I went from being a high-powered litigation attorney to lying flat on my back and just begging God to spare my life. They had to put a special IV that pumped this really toxic medication directly into my heart for almost 10 weeks. I plunged into chronic fatigue and was completely disabled for 5 dark years. There's nothing like death or facing death to force you to redefine your life. You can face suffering either with a heart of humility or it can harden your heart. If you are able to look into the face of eternity with a willingness to surrender and to be changed, then you can emerge from the ashes of your former self a completely new creation. Money, power, prestige, the things that I held highest as an attorney became as rubbish to me when I was staring into the possibility of death. And this suffering transformed my goal from making money as a lawyer to helping the women of China. During this time, I found myself just breaking with compassion for women like my former asylum client who were being forcibly sterilized or forcibly aborted at that moment. I know what it's like to lose a baby, and their pain tore at my heart. I searched endlessly on the internet, could not find a comprehensive analysis of the one-child policy anywhere. Just data rubble, random facts here and there. So my mind started fitting these facts together, and this repugnant puzzle emerged. I realized in one appalling instant that all of the tragic consequences of the one-child policy are causally connected. The first thing I realized is that what is unique about the one-child policy is not abortion. What's unique about it is state-sponsored coercion. And then I realized that I had suddenly hit upon the one issue, perhaps, that can draw pro-choice and pro-life people together, which is no one supports forced abortion because it's not a choice. Now, for example, there was this one woman who was forcibly aborted at 7 months, literally dragged off the street. They strapped her down to a table, forced her to abort the baby she so desperately wanted, and then when they were done with the procedure, they actually asked for payment. Forced abortion is violence against women. It is the greatest crime against women happening in the world today because of the sheer numbers involved in China. Beyond this, because of the traditional preference for boys, girls are selectively aborted. And so now we're in a situation where experts estimate that there are 160 to 200 million baby girls that have been selectively aborted, almost 200 million women who are missing in the world today because of sex-selective abortion. When I was growing up as a little girl, never did it even occur to me that the answer to my innocent question, who's better, boys or girls, could end up being a death sentence to hundreds of millions of baby girls. This gender imbalance now is driving human trafficking and sexual slavery, not only in China but in the surrounding countries. And the women of China are experiencing so much despair that China has the highest female suicide rate of any country in the world. According to the World Health Organization, up to 500 women a day end their lives in China. When I regained my strength, my husband and I sold our home and we committed $50,000 to helping the women and the babies of China. That's when I founded Women's Rights Without Frontiers. So instead of helplessly grieving for the women of China and for the victims of forced abortion, I am now leading an international movement to end it. Instead of lying on my sickbed, I am now traveling the world to testify about it at the US Congress, the European Parliament, the British Parliament, the Irish Parliament. Tomorrow is the first ever International Day of the Girl, and Women's Rights Without Frontiers is launching a major campaign to end gendercide. We are ending gendercide and saving babies in China one girl at a time. So how did I get here? None of that would have happened. None of this would have happened if I had not faced death. None of this would have happened if I had not had that miscarriage and lost my own child. But now I wake up every morning knowing that my work is literally saving lives in China, and for that I am eternally grateful. Like my mother said years ago, all these things happen for a purpose. It is impossible to get through life on this earth without significant suffering. What was the most painful experience in your life? I would encourage you to reach out to others who are suffering now the way that you suffered then. Your pain holds the key to your purpose. You can find your calling, because when you think about it, your heart will warm. If you fan that warmth, it will ignite a spark. And if you fan that spark, it will burst into a blaze that can change the world. Thank you.